Hey everyone, welcome to my new tutorial. Today we are going to create this cool product animation and I really hope you will enjoy this one, and if you do, please don't forget to leave the like, and if you're new around here, hit that subscribe. Now let's jump right into empty Blender file, and first of all let's select the light, press X and delete, and we'll actually use the cube here. So let's select it and let's press Ctrl 2 to add subdivision surface modifier. And let's scale it down a little bit, so press S and scale it down because this is 2 meters wide, which is quite a lot for an earphone, but I won't be doing like an exact proportions here, I just want to make it a little bit smaller, like this. Okay, now let's press Ctrl A and apply the scale. And now before we tab into the edit mode, let's go to the modifiers panel and let's apply that subdivision modifier. And let's tab into the edit mode now, press S, then Y, and scale it on Y-axis to create that shape. Maybe a little bit more, like this. I think that'll be okay. Now let's look from the front by pressing 1 on a numpad. And let's select this vertex right here and press O to enable proportional editing right here. And press G, then X, and start moving it. And then reduce the fall of radius if it's too large with the mouse wheel. And let's create a shape like this. Now let's press O to disable the proportional editing, and let's enable X-ray view. Let's select those vertices right here. You will see it's selected on the other side as well. And press G, then X, and move it slightly back so it doesn't get in the way. And now press K for a knife tool. Click here and press A for angle snap and C to enable cut through. And you can see it enabled right here. So now let's just click here and confirm with enter. And now we can select all of these vertices here, press X and delete those. Alt click this loop and press F to fill. Now let's modify the shape even further, so press G, then X, and move it outside a little bit. So we get more of this like a raindrop shape. And now we want to extrude the rest of the shape. I will go like this here. If you feel like this is too fast for you or you don't understand some core concepts, make sure to check out my courses. I carefully designed them to take you from beginner skills through low poly illustration all the way to full character illustration, textured environments, and much more. And I build the courses as creative projects, each with its own style. And every time there's a new technique or something needs explaining, we stop for a while and you get an in-depth explanation. But in the end, you still get a full project result. So if you're interested, please check out the link in the description. So let's tab back in. Now let's deactivate the X-ray view, and we'll need to figure out the way how to do that. So let's press 3 for face select and select all of these faces right here and hold shift to add to selection. I want to select all of these and some of these on top as well. And now let's press I to inset just a tiny bit like this. And now I'll use loop tools add-on. If you don't have it active, go to edit, preferences, and in the extensions search for loop tools, and you can see I have it installed right here, but you should probably have it right there, and you just click install button and the loop tools will be active. And then you can just right click and in the loop tools menu choose circle. And now let's rotate this way and press G and move it outside like this and a little bit down. Okay, I think that's a good start. And now press X and delete all of these faces. We just want this opening right here. And to better see what we are doing, let's add some subdivision surface. So let's go here and add subdivision surface modifier with 2 levels of subdivision. And now press 2 for edge select, alt click this loop, and we can make it smaller, of course, something like this, and rotate it a little bit from the angle. And basically you will kind of need to eyeball this. You don't want to go too far from the earphone. Something like this should be okay. And we're basically checking for all sides here how the shape is coming up. And now let's press E, then Z, and extrude this down. Now let's look from this side and press R to rotate, and we want to rotate this so we get as close to the flat surface as possible. Doesn't need to be perfect. And now press S to scale it down like this, and let's update the rotation a little bit here and there, maybe move it outside a little bit. I think this looks fine. So now we can press S, then Z and 0 to make it completely flat, and now we can just press E, then Z, and extrude it down just like this. Okay, and now let's press F to fill, Ctrl B to bevel, and let's increase number of cuts with the mouse wheel so we get some support loops like this. And now let's press Ctrl R and create one more loop so we get some better shading, and we can press Ctrl R again here to add more geometry there. So now let's step out and let's right click and shade smooth and see how the shape looks. And I think this is just fine, but it needs some tweaks. So you'll need to go in and kind of move some of these vertices around so we get a little bit more round connection around here. So for example, you can select this one and bring it outside like this, and you will see on the subdivided surface how the curve changed. But then you probably need to go around and play with those other ones as well so it plays nicely together. Okay. Yeah, but I think overall it looks great. So let's tab back in, press 3 for face select, select the front face here, and press I to inset, E to extrude, E to extrude again, and I to inset again. So we get a little bit sharper transition back there. Okay. Yeah, I think I like this. So let's look from the front and press G to move it to the side here, off center. And now we can press Alt D and then X to move another one here. And then press S, then X and -1. So we flip it to the other side. Press G, then X to move it somewhere here. And we can move this one closer. And now we'll create the docking station for those. So let's press Shift A and let's add a cube. Tab into the edit mode and just scale it down like this. We can enable X-ray view so we better see what's happening there. And we'll probably need something like this here. Then press S, then Z, and scale it down. Okay, maybe G, then Z, and move it down a little bit like this. And now, of course, from the side here. So let's press 7 on the numpad to look from the top. Press S, then Y, and scale it. And now let's press Ctrl B to create the bevel. And press C to enable clamp. And now increase number of cuts with the mouse wheel to something more smooth like this. And now since we are overlapping with some of the vertices, let's press A and M to merge and choose by distance. Now let's look from the front again and let's press Ctrl R and create a loop cut right here. There'll be the place where we basically split this into two parts. So let's press 1 for vertex select, hold shift and select all of these other vertices. Make sure you're in the X-ray mode, so you select everything, and press P and separate selection. Now let's tab out and let's select this part right here, tab into the edit mode, and we'll press 2 for edge select, select this edge, hold shift S and snap cursor to select it. And now we can tab out, right click, and set origin to the 3D cursor. So this way, if you press R then X, you will be able to just flip this like that. And now let's toggle the X-ray again. And now let's finish with our objects. So tab into the edit mode, alt click this loop, press F to fill, I to inset, a little bit like this, and E to extrude down. I won't go into details and create like this curved encasing for those. I would probably go and do that using booleans or something like that, but here for the simple animation, very stylized, I think this will be more than enough. And then I will tab out and add a bevel modifier with 2 segments here, and let's reduce the amount to something like this. And now if you press Ctrl 2, you will add subdivision surface modifier, and you will see the bevel modifier creates those support loops, so you get those nice sharp edges. Right click and shade smooth. And let's do the same thing here. So tab into the edit mode, alt click this loop, press F, I to inset, and E to extrude somewhere here. And now we can tab out, hold shift, select the main one, and just go ahead and copy bevel modifier and subdivision modifier. Now select it, right click and shade smooth. And now this is basically ready. So let's press Alt R to reset the rotation, hold shift, select the main one, press Ctrl P and parent to object. And now let's select this one, press H to hide, and select these two by holding shift and the main case as last and press Ctrl P and parent them as well. So now if we take this, we can move the whole thing. And now just to make this a little bit more interesting, let's press Alt H to unhide. And with the cursor still there, let's press Shift A and let's add a cylinder. And I will modify the vertices to 12, tab into the edit mode and just scale it down using S, and then press R, then Y. Enter 90 and confirm to rotate this 90 degrees, and press S then X to scale it up. So we'll just basically create a hinge. And now we can press 3 for face select this face, hold Shift, select the other one, press Ctrl B and create the bevel and reduce number of cuts with the mouse wheel. So we have only 2 loops there, like this, and press Ctrl R and create few cuts in the middle here to have like more evened out shading. Now tab out, right click and shade smooth. And this will be our hinge. So press G then Y and move it inside a little bit. Maybe we can make it even smaller, like this. So it's just a tiny detail, and let's hold Shift, select the main part and press Ctrl P and parent to object. So now we're ready, so let's hit 0 on a numpad for a camera view, and this is too far. So the easiest way to position camera is to press N for the side panel, and in the view options you can enable camera to view, so now you can use your viewport controls to position your camera. And I'm interested in an angle like this, and don't forget to disable that. You can right click and add to quick favorite, so then if you press Q you can have the lock camera to view right there. And now with the side panel still open, let's go to the item menu and leave it open. We'll need this, and let's create some animations. So I want this to be 120 frames long, and in the output settings let's modify this to 30 FPS. And first of all, I want to create a rotation with the main body, and I want to rotate this around Z-axis. So let's right click here and insert single keyframe. And the reason why I'm doing it this way will be clear to you in a few moments. So let me select this here, press Shift D and duplicate it to the other side. And now let's go to frame 30. And I want to rotate this full circle, so 360. Let's confirm and right click and insert single keyframe. So this is now very simple rotation animation, but I want this object to kind of spool up to the other side before the actual rotation. So on the frame 10 or 9, something really close, I want to reset this back to 0 and go few negative degrees. So I don't know, maybe something like -30, and let's right click and insert single keyframe. And this is basically the block out for the animation, but I want this to continue rotating a little bit and then, you know, start again in this movement. So I will basically just select this keyframe right here, press Shift D and duplicate it right there to the end of the animation, +1 frame, so 121. And now if we make this a little bit larger and hit Ctrl Tab here, you will get into the graph editor, and you can use Ctrl and middle mouse button to kind of scale this in and out, like this. And now I want to change this animation curve to be kind of a little bit more snappy. So first of all, here I want this movement to be a little bit more sudden, so let's move the handle right there. And here let's select this keyframe and press V, and I want to change this to free, so this will allow me to move just one handle like this. And now this keyframe I want to move down a little bit. So if you remember, this is 360 frames, but I want to end on that frame. So I will press G then Y here and move this slightly down like this, and then adjust the handle so it's more smooth there. So we'll get this kind of movement. And you will see the whole rotation happens here, but then the finish is very smooth and continues until the end. Maybe we can bring this a little bit lower and make this handle shorter. Okay, I really like this. And then what I want to happen is for the lid to open and, you know, those spots to fly out for a little bit, and then, you know, folding back down with the lid closing in a sudden movement. So let's go to like frame 15 for example, and let's insert the X rotation here for the lid part. Insert single keyframe And then on the frame 25, let's rotate this like that. So I don't know, minus 170, doesn't need to go all the way to 180. Right click and insert single keyframe. And again, at this stage, we're just blocking out the animation. Let's select this frame right here, press Shift D, then X to lock it on the X-axis. And let's just move it here on frame 60. Remember, this is the keyframe. These are only the handles. And now basically we just need to select this one here, press Shift D, press X to lock it, and do the same thing and move it to frame 70. So this is the movement locking in place. But again, I want to make this a little bit more snappy. So let's select this keyframe right there, press V and choose free. And now modify the handle so it's more steep here. And let's do the same thing right here. So it kind of, you know, shuts the lid with a sudden movement. So press V, choose free, and do it right there as well. But again, I want this movement to be sudden in the beginning and then continue a little bit as the animation goes on. So let's select this one, press G, then Y, and move it back here. So we create this kind of curve right there. And now if you play it back, it will open and continue the movement a little bit, and then shuts down suddenly. And now let's press H to hide this object in the viewport. And let's select this one, this left one. I want this to move first. So let's move, I don't know, like frame 15 is fine. And let's right click and insert Z location, insert single keyframe there. And then we'll move to frame 30 because we want to leave the lid a little bit of a time to open so it doesn't like fly through. So on frame 30, we should be somewhere here, for example. Right click and insert single keyframe. And if this is close together, you can of course use Control and middle mouse button to zoom on it. But if you press period on a numpad, it will zoom just right in. And now let's do the same thing as before, but it will happen a little bit sooner. So around frame 50 and 60. So let's select this one, press Shift D, then X, move it to frame 50, and then this one right here. And again, we'll select these two, press V and choose free. And now make them a little bit more steep, like this. And again, I want this to be like a continuous movement right there. So let's select this one, press G, then Y, and move it down slightly, like this. So it will fly up and continue the movement until it kind of falls down in a sudden movement. Okay. And now I want to do the same thing on the other one. So let's move to frame like 25, select this one, and let's right click and insert single keyframe here. But I won't do that all over again. Let's just select this one, select all of the keyframes, press Ctrl C. And now let's select this one and press Ctrl V, and it will paste the movement on the Z axis. So we will get the same thing. But one difference I want to do here is to select these two with the handles as well and press G, then Y, and move them higher up. So this one will fly higher. And here we can adjust for the curves. So let's zoom on it and we can readjust the handles so it matches the value range. Okay. Now let's press Alt H in the viewport and let's play back the whole animation. Okay, I think we'll need to figure out the timing a little bit better. I think the shift between those two is a little bit too late. So let's just move them 5 frames within each other. And I think the rotation might need a little bit of a help. I think we need to be higher up here with the rotation. Okay, and these might go a little bit sooner, so let's select both of those, select all keyframes, press G, then X, and just move it to the left a little bit. Okay, and now closing the lid should match the fall of the earphones. So here it should be already closed. So either we can make this longer or we can bring this a little bit sooner. So let's just bring this right here. Maybe even sooner. Okay, and maybe readjust the curve a little bit so it's more fluent. Nice, I really like this. So now the reason why I'm only doing these keyframes on certain channels, first of all, it's much easier to see, you know, when you have just one animation curve. But other than that, I can still modify the rotation on Y and on X, and this will still work. So you can still reposition your object. You don't have any location keyframe, so you can move it around and it will still, you know, animate, and you can change all of those values except the one that is always already keyframed. So yeah, let's do a little bit of this rotation. I think it gives the scene a little bit more dynamic, like this. And now I want to animate the camera a little bit, because when they fly up, I think this breaks the composition a little bit, and I think a little bit of a camera handshake should look nicely here. So let's select the camera and let's just right click and insert keyframes on rotation. Let's press Ctrl Tab here and let's go back here to the timeline. And now let's press Shift D and duplicate it to the other side. And now let's make some keyframes in between so we can enable recording, and press R twice and hold Shift for smaller increments and do very small adjustments with the camera rotation. R twice and hold Shift, but remember, really small adjustments. And now here, when it's up, we can go a little bit higher so it's centered here, and then when it goes down, you can press R twice and go back here like this, and then finish with, you know, some slide movements. Okay, and now don't forget to disable this. That could cause a lot of mess if you know, keep moving things around with auto keying on. Okay, works nicely, but I think we need to go higher up a little bit sooner. So maybe just delete this keyframe right there, so we kind of follow the scene a little bit better, and then maybe move this a little bit later. Now let's hold Shift, reset cursor to world origin. Let's press Shift A, we'll add a plane, press R then X to rotate it towards the camera like this, and then RZ. Okay, and then press G and Shift Z to move on X and Y axis. Now let's make it larger, so this will be our backdrop like this. And now I'll use, you know, some HDRI from Polyhaven. Let me bring in this one, and let me switch to shader editor right there and to the world settings, and you will see the HDRI right here. So let's set up some rendering. I will switch to cycles, enable GPU and denoising, and something like 64 frames for the animation should be fine. Let's press Ctrl B to limit the preview only for the camera, and let's preview the rendered. First I want to check the rotation here of the lighting. I think I want the windows to be on the left side here, so something like this should work nicely. And now I want to reduce the strength, because I want this for only reflections, and reduce the warmth like this, so we get a little bit of a blue light, maybe a little bit of a tint there. The HDRIs in this form come from Polyhaven when you have the paid add-on. I'm in no way affiliated, I just use it like this. You are free to go to Polyhaven, download the same HDRI and create this setup on your own. This is how it looks right here, but it's just super convenient, you know, to have this as a drag and drop into your scene. So that's why I purchased the add-on, and by the way, it's like super cheap for the value you're getting. So yeah, definitely get it if you can. So I'll press Ctrl B here to limit this again, and let's press Shift A, and I'll add some area light to add additional lighting, make it larger for some soft shadows, and increase the power like that. And for some additional reflections, I will press Shift A and add a spotlight, press G then Z, move it up here, and now press pivot on a keyboard to switch to 3D cursor for the pivot point, or you can do it right here, and then press R twice to rotate this around from the side here and do this really strong, like 500, and find some nice rim light here, something like this. And now we can select the object, create a new material, and this will be the white one, and let's decrease the roughness almost all the way to 0, and you will see those reflections from the HDRI. So this is why I used it in the first place here. And here in the back we can make this metal, so let's increase the metallic all the way, reduce the roughness a little bit, and maybe reduce the brightness, but I think this is fine. So now if we play back the animation, let me bring up the timeline here. Let's scrub through the animation. This should be the same white material there, and if I tab in with this still selected, I can press Ctrl plus on a numpad and create a new material and hit assign and create a new one there. That will be black with full roughness. Okay, looks quite nice, I think. And now with the background we can create a new material there and maybe play with the brightness, or you can, you know, subdivide this, add some displacement, do like a wavy texture or something. It should be really nice. Okay, I really like that. Now to make this a little bit more funky, we can do some color shifts there. So let me switch the material to object mode in the shader editor, and let me bring this up a little bit like that, and let's press Shift A and let's search for hue, saturation value, and let's find some nice color like this. Okay, and let's set the hue to 0 and just plug it right here. Okay, that'll give us this color right there. And on frame 0 we can right click and insert keyframe on the hue, and then on 121 we can change this to 1, right click and insert keyframe. But remember, this will be Bezier animation, and to see those keyframes here you need to have the node selected. So now you can see those right there. You can hold Shift to select them, press T and choose linear interpolation, so they'll change the colors much more in a much more fluent way. So we have this, you know, funky color change there. And I really don't like how I left this open. So we can either bring this lower down, or we can change the angle. So we can just play with this rotation here, so it's not, you know, visible. Of course, you're more than welcome to go in, you know, and model the inside so it looks better. Okay, and I would like to do the same thing on the background here. So let's select this node right here, press Ctrl C, and I will select the background and press Ctrl V here. But now we don't have the keyframes there because we moved it to another object. So let's go to frame 1 and let's set the hue to 0 and right click and insert keyframe, and again 121. Let's set this to 1, right click and insert keyframe, and we can plug it here to the background. So now the background will change as well, but it's a little bit too strong for my taste, so I think I will just go ahead and reduce the saturation here in the main color and maybe increase the value a little bit. So this will give us like a more pastel color look. So now the final thing I want to do here is to give this a little bit more punch. So first of all, in the render settings, make sure you enable motion blur, and in the color management we can enable higher contrast settings like this and play with the exposure, but you can enable curves as well, and set the bright tones somewhere here, and then bring down the darker parts. So now if you move this, you will see the contrast is more punchy. As you move this lower, you get this darker shades in the shadows. Okay, and maybe we can add a little bit more saturation to the background. Okay. Yeah, it looks quite nice. So of course now you can play around with some more lights. For example, you can try to duplicate this one and create, you know, some more reflections from different angles. But yeah, otherwise I really like the final animation. So when you're satisfied, you can just go to the output settings, switch this to FFmpeg, encoding, choose MP4, choose your folder, and then go render animation, wait out your frames, and your animation will be ready. So I really hope you enjoyed this one, and again, if you did, please leave that like, and if you're new around here, hit that subscribe. Thank you all for watching and have a wonderful day.